Welcome to the American College of Clinical Hypnotherapy. And today we're going to look at phobias and fears themselves. Dr. Flary is the author of this program. So those of you that are going through the clinical hypnotherapy program, good luck. And this will be just a short video on how hypnotherapy is one way that phobias can be treated in a non-invasive method in itself. So we'll go through quite a few types of treatments, but we're also going to spend a lot of time understanding what a phobia is and the types. So phobias ideally are defined as irrational fears. There's no rationale for them. Phobias actually fall under the category in the DSM-5 as a type of anxiety disorder. So they include in the moment induced anxiety, which is caused directly by being exposed to the object or thing or situation, or it can be expressed with an anxiety that's due just to thinking about the thing or the place or the situation itself. So some individuals can't even look in a book of a particular spider or snake because the fear is that strong. And of course, many of these phobias are due to different types of animals, places, or situations that they may fall in. With phobias, though, even though they are irrational, they're very real to the internal chemistry of the individual. It actually activates the fight or flight response. So individuals, when exposed to a phobia, due to this activated sense, can easily hyperventilate, faint, or flee due to the great fear that they have. And this is due to the heart rate increase and the extreme anxiety arousal and the symptoms of it that are manifested during the fight or flight situation. Types of phobias include anything, really. I mean, it can be as silly as being afraid of a clown to the more traditional phobias: arachnophobia, ophidiophobia of snakes, acrophobia, the fear of heights. And that's a very common one. Aerophobia, the fear of flying. Amaxophobia, the fear of driving a vehicle. Cynophobia, a fear of dogs. Astrophobia, a fear of storms. Mysophobia, fear of germs. Trypanophobia, fear of needles. Hemophobia, the fear of blood. Claustrophobia, being in a closed space. Nyctophobia, being a dark place, fear of the dark itself. Pyrophobia, having to deal with fire. And of course, dentophobia, which many individuals, if you think about it, they do have fears of going to the actual dentist, and they actually need meditation to overcome it. Some people just simply have fear and anxiety of being in a public place as well. So these phobias are irrational fears, but the science behind it is that phobias usually are learned behavior due to past trauma or witnessing it and imitating it from a parental figure. So a phobia is a conditioned stimuli and an unconditioned stimuli combined together for one conditioned response. So I'll say that with an example so that you can better understand. So if there is an individual, say a girl, who while younger fell, and it was in a high place, but she wasn't harmed, but she fell, she's going to have a fear of flight, fear of heights. The reason being is that the conditioned stimuli is the fact that she's very high. She's on a mountaintop or top of a building itself. This is something that is concrete, that is unchangeable. The subjective element is the unconditioned stimuli. She slipped. She almost fell. People screamed around her and grabbed her. This traumatized her in turn and created a conditioned response. The conditioned response does not differentiate within her psyche the difference between height and slip. They're both the same thing. So the unconditioned response is the thing that happened, while the conditioned response is the thing, place, or situation, which really is neutral in itself and should not cause fear. But it's the event that happened, the unconditioned stimuli, that occurred with the conditioned stimuli that creates this irrational response in itself. The physiology of fear is within the limbic system. Our amygdala, part of our brain, processes fear itself. The hypothalamus, though, processes fear as well and activates the pituitary gland, which goes back to what we spoke about earlier, the fight or flight response, which activates the body when a stressor or something initiates the need to defend oneself or to flee. And that activates with the pituitary gland cortisol within the body and the adrenal glands. Epinephrine and other types of hormones are then flushed into the body, which increases heart rate, which increases the ability for one's muscles to become more tense and then to be able to do more demanding things. With this increase in blood flow, this increase in heart rate and blood pressure, this is good temporarily, but if it's chronically occurring, obviously this can be a chronic issue in regards to how our body responds to stress and fear itself. Now, in addition, another part of the brain, the hippocampus, plays a role in the memory. So when the amygdala and the hypothalamus all play roles in identifying what is occurring, which is it perceives as a threat, which could be irrational as well, which is a fear. The hippocampus will play a role in processing the memory, and it receives impulses from the amygdala, which kind of give a description, the emotional description of the situation. Now, if the memory of the incident is very traumatic and it's saturated in emotion, then it's going to be imprinted much more strongly within the brain, and you're going to have this type of adverse reaction with the conditioned and unconditioned stimuli, creating this conditioned response itself. Now, memories are also stored in the cortex region, and what's interesting is when you have a look at disgust at a particular thing you're afraid of or dislike, such as a spider, the area that controls that facial response is usually where the memory is actually stored. So that's a little bit on the physiology of fear and phobia itself. So how do we deal with these irrational fears? Well, one is exposure therapy, which is terrifying for some. I myself am afraid of spiders, and I would not want to have to pet a tarantula, but that would be an eventual process that would be the culmination of many months of therapy where I would look at a picture of a spider, which fortunately I can do, and I still feel the disgust and a little bit of the trepidation, but the exposure would start with photos and gradually work your way up. With that comes a cognitive behavioral therapy, where you actually start to think about what it is, what causes the fear, what they really are, and a better understanding of it. That could be the same with fear of flying, as we see in the one picture here. Kind of making fun of exposure therapy in the most dramatic of fashions. Others turn to meditation, EFT, and of course, the main element of our video, hypnotherapy, and how hypnotherapy can go back into your mind and look at the situations and try to find where the seed, where the source of this particular phobia is. And it can help teach one individual how to regain composure, breathing techniques, and to then, when confronted with the phobia, start to utilize those techniques to lower one's blood pressure and to better respond to it in a more rational area. So we have to identify the triggers that are associated with the phobia, reframe it, and try to measure our anxiety level and utilize this breathing to reduce the arousal that occurs within the anxiety itself that is being caused by the presence of this particular phobia. And that's how hypnotherapy works. It goes more into our inner recesses of our brain through guidance and allows us to reflect and better understand. And then when we're conscious, to be able to utilize what we were trying to accomplish in therapy, and hope it works for the best when actually confronted with the situation, or at least a little bit of improvement each time in itself. So we offer two programs that are kind of relevant to phobias: the clinical hypnotherapy program, the links below, and the EFT program, which also looks to remove trauma and energy and also has a rating system of your anxiety level after you do it once and then proceeding a second time. So you're gradually on a grading scale judging your anxiety level in relationship to the actual phobia itself. So those are some useful programs that individuals can utilize to become certified, and also information for those who just want to be able to use these things to better understand phobia and to better exist with it. Because there's one point to be a little bit afraid of something, but if something is crippling you, then you might definitely want to consider getting some help. Our phone below is 330-652-7776, and our email is info@aihcp.org. I'd like to thank you for listening and have a good day.